If you want to buy a house in the next 90 days using your VA home loan benefit, I have a step-by-step breakdown that you need to follow to make this a smooth, seamless, and also less expensive process for you and your family. All right, so this video is broken up into a week-to-week basis, so that way you don't find yourself trying to cram too many things into one particular day. You find yourself making more of an informed decision versus one that's a little bit more irrational. So in week number 1, the first thing that I want you to start off by doing is not contacting a realtor, not contacting a loan officer. I want you to stop scrolling. I want you to get off of the home search sites like Zillow, Redfin, and realtor.com, or any other home search site out there that you maybe have on your phone. Borderline delete them if you can, because right now this is only going to create stress in your life and in your situation because you don't even know whether or not you can afford to buy that particular home. So now that we've gotten off of those sites, what you want to do is figure out your budget. You can sit down, take out a sheet of paper, or use an Excel spreadsheet, whatever you like to use, to break down exactly what that looks like. If there's multiple people in the household, whether that's you're married or your spouse, whatever it is, you're going to do that together. But in this situation, what I want you to do is figure out how much do you guys have coming in gross total income. As long as you're a W-2 wage earner, you're going to be able to use the gross income. If you're self-employed, then that's going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to use your tax returns to do that and come up with that number. But you want to figure out how much is coming in every single month. And then you need to figure out how much is going out. And the how much is going out part is going to heavily depend on what you have showing up on your credit report. Streaming services, cell phone, gas, anything like that does not count. It's going to be what's going out showing up on your credit report for things like personal loans, auto loans, credit cards, mortgage if you already have a property, anything like that that's really showing up on your credit report. You're going to use the monthly payment that you have for those individual things. And then after you've come up with how much you have coming in and how much you have going out, what I want you to do is figure out what you're comfortable paying. Maybe it's what you're currently paying for rent. Maybe it's less. More than likely, it's probably even more. There are certain situations that are different than others, but this is a number that really only you can come up with. You want to know what that looks like before you go talking to anyone else because you don't want anyone else's words clouding your judgment. Once you've gotten that squared away, the next thing you can start doing is getting pre-approved with a VA knowledgeable lender. Now, why do I say VA knowledgeable lender? Well, because you want to work with somebody who is extremely knowledgeable or an expert in the thing that you are doing. You don't want to just work with any lender or even just any lender online on Google who shows up first with the massive marketing budget and says, we are the best VA lender, because that does not necessarily make them the best just because they do a lot of something. It maybe just makes them the one that has the largest budget to be able to advertise to the most people. Now, I would love to raise my hand and say me and my team are the team that you should work with. I would love to have the opportunity to work with you and help you through your VA loan journey. But if I don't, regardless, I will still be here to create content and hopefully educate you and empower you on your VA loan journey. Now, when working with my team or someone else, what you want to understand is you need to figure out how much you can afford to purchase. What does that overall pre-approval amount look like? You also need to figure out what does that monthly payment look like for that overall house that you're going to be purchasing as well. You don't just want to have a VA lender that tells you, hey, guess what? Congratulations, you're approved for $500,000. And you don't even know what that $500,000 payment would look like. This can actually go against whatever budget you maybe have set for yourself. So the thing that I want you to make sure you're doing is communicating with your VA knowledgeable lender by telling them, hey, I am actually looking for a monthly payment that looks like this. Can you tell me after you have pre-approved me what that would look like for my situation? So that way I can make an informed decision and this property meets my financial budget. The next thing that I want you to do is not focus on interest rates. And here's why. Interest rates change every single day. And if you are focused on the interest rate at the time that you get pre-approved, you actually can find yourself in a little bit more of a stressful situation later. Because when you're going through the pre-approval process, your interest rate is actually not locked in at all. Your interest rate does not get locked in until you actually go under contract, which could be days, weeks, or even months later, which means that depending on what that rate was when you were getting pre-approved, you could find yourself seeing a drastically different interest rate later. So in the time of you doing a pre-approval, what you want to make sure your VA knowledgeable lender is doing is using a little bit more of a conservative number when pre-approving you. So that way, if things fluctuate in the market, you know that you'll still at least be pre-approved later. Another thing that I want you to do is figure out how much cash to close that you'll need for your particular situation. Now, cash to close is basically a breakdown of how much money you'll need in order to close on that property. Now, keep in mind, cash to close is not a down payment. Cash to close is going to make up your overall closing costs in order to purchase that house. A lot of veterans actually confuse cash to close with down payment, and these are actually two completely different things. Closing costs is a part of the real estate transaction. This could be for things like title and escrow fees, your property taxes, homeowners insurance, your appraisal even. That's typically what your cash to close will look like. Your cash to close can be roughly anywhere between 1.5% to about 2.5% of whatever property that you're purchasing. Let's say it's 2% in your situation. You're buying a $400,000 house. That's about $8,000. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't have $8,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're disqualified and that you can't purchase a home, because there are situations where you could even negotiate to have the seller to cover those closing costs. Or maybe you have the seller cover part of those closing costs. Regardless, you want to have that conversation up front, not when you start looking at properties or ready to make an offer, because the last thing that you want to do is find out later after you've made a bunch of offers or even gone under contract and now you've got a legal agreement to purchase that house and you find out that you're going to have to bring more money to the table than you were already prepared for. All right, so in week number 1 so far, what we have done is we've gotten off the home search sites, we figured out our budget, we talked to a VA knowledgeable lender. The next thing is you are now going to figure out what your negotiables and non-negotiables are. This is essentially a pros and cons list. You're going to come up with basically like a little bit of a T-chart. I don't know if you ever use those in school, but you're basically going to put things that you want in the property and things that you need in the property. These are completely different, needs and wants, or wants and needs. But what I want you to do on that chart is basically outline everything that you're expecting from that property, whether it's buying a brand new home, a pre-existing property, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Do you want 1-story, 2-story, maybe you even want 3-story? I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe you're looking for a condo, a townhome. What's the location? What's the commute time? What type of amenities maybe do you expect in that particular community? You want to outline everything that you basically expect out of that property. But what I also want you to make sure you do before you do this is leave room for growth. This is a big mistake that people make, is they almost overload the needs side and have a few wants. And to be honest with you, I think that the want side should be greater than the need side. You'd be surprised what you need and what you want. And the reason for that is because it gives you more things to choose from when you actually do start looking at property. The next thing that we're going to do in week number 1 is we're going to talk to a VA knowledgeable realtor. And the reason that you want your realtor to be knowledgeable in the VA home loan benefit and not just any real estate professional is because there are some very key things in the VA handbook that your real estate professional better know about. And if they don't, guess whose time they're wasting? Yours. Because you may find yourself looking at a property that doesn't meet the VA's minimum property requirements, which are a set of rules that are in the VA handbook that every property must be able to meet. Every single day I talk to veterans, just like you guys who are watching this channel, who reach out to me and tell me things that you heard from a real estate professional, and I'm constantly telling you guys this is not true. And this is simply because real estate professionals oftentimes look down upon VA home loan benefit when really it's a very powerful strategy for veterans to use to achieve home ownership. It just comes down to working with the right VA knowledgeable realtor in your corner to help look out for your best interest. If you want to get connected with the VA knowledgeable realtor, I have a network of literally over 18,000 real estate agents around the country. Wherever you are located, I can connect you with somebody in your market that will look out for your best interest and help you navigate the VA loan process. After you've connected with your VA knowledgeable realtor, what I want you to do is review your negotiables and non-negotiables with them. Have that conversation with them on what you are expecting and what you are looking for. Over communicate with them. Ask questions. Build a relationship with them, because this is somebody that you are going to be going on a very expensive journey with. I mean, you're essentially investing in the largest investment that you'll ever make in your life, essentially until you do it again. What I want you to do is also ask them for recommendations on home inspectors, because the real estate agent has probably sold several houses before in the past, I would hope, which means they've worked with several other home inspectors and have a good track record of who is a valuable source. All right, so now we're done with week number 1, which really was the most busy week of this overall 12-week or 90-day process. The next thing we're going to do in week number 2 through really week number 8, this is going to be the longest stretch of this overall period, is you're now going to have the ability to get back on those home search sites. So if you want to go back on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, this is when I would say to do it. But I would also do this with caution, because those sites are actually not the most accurate information. Where they're getting their information from is really by pulling as much data as they can from the MLS, which your real estate agent would have access to. And now that you have a real estate agent in your corner, your real estate agent can grant that access to you to provide you with the most up-to-date and current information, and also set parameters and filters with you, so that way you guys are able to communicate about different properties that you're interested in. This next 6 weeks is essentially really, I would say, probably the most fun, right? You get to go look at homes, you get to go check out open houses, you get to picture yourself living there, and you really get an opportunity to figure out what makes the most sense for you based off of those non-negotiables and negotiables that you had set and what you were looking for in your overall budget. The other thing that I want you to also do is plan within this 6-week period for when you plan to be in that house, because remember, when we started this process, we were thinking about it from the course of a 90-day to 12-week game plan. So maybe you're trying to line this up with the timeline of when a lease ends or when you need to be out of your current living situation. Regardless of what that is, those are also things that you want to communicate with your lending team and your real estate team, because chances are they've already gone through situations like this in the past to help make this as smooth as they can for veterans. We've done many different things with leases to help veterans be able to get out of them sooner without having to come out of pocket. There's so many different strategies I don't want to break down on this video because this would be a very, very long video. But essentially, this is where this 6-week period gets to hopefully line up with what your long-term goal is. Once you have found the house that you're looking for, well, this is where you get to make an offer on that particular home, and hopefully the seller of that home is going to accept your offer. The next 4 weeks is going to be the escrow phase, or the under contract phase, which is you have entered into a binding agreement with a home seller, and under contract will lead to a lot of things happening that you're not actually going to be in full control of. Typically, what will happen right after you go under contract is you will have a home inspection done on that property that you're under contract for. And that home inspector is going to go through every nook and cranny of that house. They're essentially trying to find something wrong. And home inspections can take several hours. I actually do not recommend that you be at the home inspection. I recommend that you at least show up towards the end of the inspector being there, so that way they can go over the report with you and also show you certain things that maybe they found versus you just reviewing the report. If you're there the whole time the inspector's there, you're kind of getting in their way. That's the only reason I say not to exactly be right there the whole time. But what will happen is if they do find something wrong in that report, you will now have the ability to request repairs, or you'll have the ability to renegotiate certain things with that particular seller. If everything checks out, we're going to move forward with this transaction. And then what you're going to also do is lock in your interest rate with your lending team. This is when interest rates matter, because this is when whatever your rate is locked in at will be what your rate would be for the home that you're actually purchasing. Next, you're also going to receive some disclosures. You're going to get a loan estimate. You're going to get some like legal documents that you're going to have to sign and submit to the lender. And you're also going to be sending in updated documents that the lender maybe had requested at the beginning of the pre-approval process. The reason for that is so that way they have the most current information for your file, because they have to now submit it to an underwriter, and the underwriter is going to review that file and review all of those documents. The underwriter is going to issue what's called a conditional loan approval, which means the loan approval is conditional to you satisfying those documents. Whatever those documents are, they can vary. I wouldn't stress too much about this. This is heavily going to be focused on your lender, helping you find where those things are, so that way you can provide them to them and they can provide it to the underwriter. Another thing that will happen in these last 4 weeks is what's called an appraisal. The appraisal is only to determine value, and what they're going to be doing is doing some research off of recent home sales in the area for similar properties. They're going to go and actually visit the property. They're not actually digging through everything kind of like the home inspector was. They will make visual determinations to make sure the property meets the VA's minimum property requirements. And if the appraisal checks out at the agreed purchase price, then we're good to go. If it checks out and is over the agreed purchase price, well, congratulations, you now have equity. But what if it comes in below that agreed purchase price? Well, we now have a couple of things that are going to happen. First, on a VA loan, the VA has this thing called Tidewater. And Tidewater is something where the appraiser actually reaches out to your lender and your realtor to let them know that they are more than likely going to appraise this property below whatever our agreed sales price is. This is so that way you can provide additional information or comparables to the appraiser as to how you came up with this agreed purchase price. If the appraisal still comes in below whatever your agreed purchase price is, you'll now have the ability to typically renegotiate with that particular seller. And it's up to you and your real estate agent to submit that renegotiation or that updated offer. Now, the seller still has a choice. The seller can accept that new offer or they can decline it. If they decline that offer, you now have the ability to decide whether or not you want to continue to move forward or you want to walk away. The reason this is important is because your loan is only going to be up to whatever your agreed purchase price is or your appraised value, whichever is lower of the two. So if you are agreeing to buy the house for $400,000, but the appraisal came in at $390,000, your loan can only be for $390,000. But if you are buying the house for $400,000 and the appraisal came in at $410,000, your loan is only going to be for $400,000. So these are things that you want to understand when going through that appraisal process and how that all looks. Now let's assume everything moves forward smoothly. You had a good home inspection, you got your rate locked, you cleared all your conditions with the underwriter, and you had a good appraisal. Well, the next thing that really ends up happening here is you get to close on your new home. You are now a homeowner, which means that you get to invite me over to your barbecue. I'm just kidding. I mean, if you want to invite me, but this is an exciting time for you and your family. So I hope you got value from this video. I hope this helps you along your home buying journey with the VA home loan benefit. The last thing I want to leave you with, which is the most important thing, is Jesus loves you and he paid the ultimate price for your life. So if you turn to him, trust in him, and believe in him, he has a beautiful plan and purpose for you. I'll see you in the next one.